guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought that I would bring you a book haul but with a slight twist. As you may have seen in my previous video, which was a book review of The Virgin Suicide by Jeffrey Eugenides, which I'll leave a link to below. I mentioned that I'd actually picked up that book from my local library, and I do think that it's a fantastic resource. So as much as I love bookshops and going online and browsing at books, I actually thought that I would go back to my local library and pick up a few books, which I have on loan for the next few weeks, and then aim to read them over the course of this month. So yeah, thought I would just talk you through what I've picked up, and if you have either read these books yourself or read something else by these authors that you would recommend, it would be great to know, and be great to know what you think about these books, although please no spoilers. Okay, so let's just get started. So the first book is Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. I feel like I'm one of the few people who hasn't seen the film of this, but that's kind of deliberate because, as I've mentioned, I think in my very first video, I much prefer reading novels and then later seeing some of the film adaptations or television adaptations. Sometimes if I love a book so much, I can't even bring myself to then actually watch those adaptations because I don't want that to kind of get in the way of the images I have in my mind. But yeah, this film is very famous and iconic for Audrey Hepburn's role as Holly Golightly, and yet I haven't read it at all. It's quite a short novel, as you can probably see, so I'm hoping that I will be able to read this quite quickly. But yeah, never read anything by Truman Capote, and he was a real character himself, somebody who has then been the subject of film in recent years too. So yeah, really interested to finally read something by him, and yeah, then potentially afterwards I can finally watch the film. But yeah, I'll be excited to give this one a go. The next book that I picked up is Washington Square by Henry James. I earlier on this year read The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James, and it was the first Henry James novel that I'd actually read, which I'm kind of surprised by, only because for my dissertation at university I wrote about the novels of Edith Wharton, who is famous for writing The Age of Innocence and House of Mirth, amongst many other novels. And she and Henry James are actually very good friends, and so I've read a lot of the accounts that Henry gave about Edith. He very much championed her work, and I know was a big inspiration to her, and yet I don't know, perhaps it was because it was a bit too close to home in terms of all that time I spent writing my dissertation, but for whatever reason I hadn't actually read much of, well, any beyond the kind of small extracts that I had read as part of my dissertation research. I hadn't actually read a full novel by Henry James, and upon reading The Portrait of a Lady, I really enjoyed it. I can definitely see why Edith Wharton was inspired by his work. There are a lot of similarities, I think, between the two, and certainly in terms of the class that they're writing about, and the just the characters and their characterization of those different personalities is very similar. So it was very kind of comforting reading it, brought back a lot of memories. But yeah, really enjoyed reading it. And although I do have some other Henry James novels on my bookshelf, when I saw this in the library and again noticed that it's a relatively short novel, I thought that it would be a good one to give a go. I just really like Henry James's writing style. I like, as I've mentioned, that kind of the way that he characterises people and looks at the kind of the idiosyncrasies of the way that people behave with one another and their mannerisms, and just generally like the reflection of that aspect of society around the turn of the century. I think it's really interesting. So I'm sure that I won't be disappointed by this, but I haven't heard anything about Washington Square, so I'm intrigued but also excited to give this a go. My next book is one that I definitely feel that I should have read because it's such a classic, and it is Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. Now this is one of the exceptions to the rule that I have, in the sense that I'm fairly certain that I must have seen some sort of adaptation of this at some stage, not deliberately, but I feel like there must be a few versions of this knocking around, and I've probably seen one. Even if I wasn't kind of seeking it out intentionally, I imagine there was probably some TV adaptation made of it at some point. It's one of her most famous works, and features Hercule Poirot. But yeah, it's such a classic mystery novel by Agatha Christie, and yet I haven't read it, which I feel all the worse about, considering that in 2014 I actually went to visit the home that she wrote most of her novels from and then grew up in, which is actually in Devon, off on a lovely little island which you can only get to by the boat or steam engine. It's a really, really beautiful place. Sadly, there was a lot of renovations going on at the time when I went, so there was like massive like scaffolding outside it, but really beautiful, and I can certainly see why she was inspired to write so much, having, you know, spent so much time in somewhere as beautiful as that. But after that, I felt really inspired to read a bit more Agatha Christie, because I used to read a lot of kind of like mysteries when I was younger, and then haven't then really given them much of a go. And then sadly, I just didn't. I think I was quite busy with like work and different bits and pieces. I did purchase a couple, and I think I read at least one of them, but the others are no doubt somewhere still on my bookshelf. So I thought, if I read one of her most famous novels, then hopefully that will kind of reignite that little mission that I had. But yeah, I've heard so much about this, and I guess for some people these kinds of mysteries, they're not everybody's cup of tea, but it should be a pretty easy read. And yeah, I'm looking forward to finally being able to tick this one off the list. The next book is another one which is incredibly short. Look at that. But again, it's one that I really feel that I should have read and I haven't, which is awful. But it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. And yeah, it's such a classic. In some respects more so than Treasure Island, because I think it's inspired so much other work, and the characters of Jekyll and Hyde are so iconic, and it's a very dark idea, I think. But yeah, really interested to read this Gothic novel. I imagine it will be very different from Treasure Island, but definitely excited to read more by Robert Louis Stevenson, especially because, to my knowledge, he didn't write a vast number of novels, or potentially it's just that some of them aren't quite as well known as this text and Treasure Island. If there are other novels that you've read, or other pieces of work by Robert Louis Stevenson that you would recommend, please let me know about them in the comments below, or if you can send me any links to them, then that would be great. But I'm sure that I will enjoy this. I also love the way that, I'm not sure if you can see that, but in the cover art there's all of these different kinds of conical glasses and pipettes and all of this kind of science related imagery. These editions are just beautiful. I know that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but they really are amazing. So yeah, looking forward to reading that. And then the final book that I picked up with, I'm really in two minds about. One of my favourite books of all time is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I read it in 2004 when I was on a family holiday in Wales, and I just remember I absolutely loved it. It was at a time when the Athens Olympics were on, and I love my sport, I love watching sport, but it says something that I actually kind of slightly begrudged the Olympics taking place, because it meant that there were like these kind of key events that GB were doing really well in, like the rowing, and Kelly Holmes doing so well in the athletics, and doing very well in the sailing, and this, that and the other. And yeah, I was like, oh, I just want to carry on reading Rebecca because it's so good. it really gripped me. I loved it, and yeah, I've reread it on a number of occasions, and I still absolutely love it. We also then looked at that as a novel at university, and I was so excited because I love it so much. So I was really interested to find that Susan Hill has actually written a sequel, which is called Mrs. De Winter. I'm intrigued because, given that I love Rebecca as much as I do, my gut reaction on actually finding this wasn't one of joy. It was like, oh no, somebody's tried to write a sequel. That's surely not going to end up very well. However, it is written by Susan Hill, who has written a lot of kind of gothic, mild horror sort of fiction. And that does give me a bit more faith that perhaps this isn't too bad. Apparently it's set 10 years after Rebecca, and Mrs. De Winter is the name of Maxim's second wife, who narrates the book Rebecca, who's never actually kind of given a name. So I'm really intrigued to see how Susan Hill set out to write a sequel to Rebecca. Really not sure though whether I'm going to enjoy it, but yeah, I imagine it will be gripping, but given how much I love Rebecca, I don't know. I'm going to try my best to be objective, but I think it's going to be a bit tough. So they are the books that I picked up from my local library recently. As I said, if there are other books by these authors that you would recommend, or if you've read any of these and without giving spoilers, can let me know what you thought in the comments below. That would be fantastic. And also let me know what you're reading at the moment, what you're enjoying. It's always really good to hear some recommendations. And yeah, hopefully see you soon. Take care. Bye.